Page 36, the Mishnah tells us, נסדק, ניקב, וחסר כלשהו, פסול. The Mishnah said that if the etrog split or pierce, so it makes it unfit. But if it's nikav, if it's the hole, ולא חסר משהו, it's not totally taking away, so it's okay. So now we elaborate on that. Tane ula bar Chanina, nikav nekev mefulash bemashu, which means he said if the etrog have a hole that goes through, meaning from one side to another, total hole, so it's unfit regardless to the size, whatever the size of the hole is. ושאינו מפולש בקיסר, but if it's not one side to the other, so it's the side of a small tiny coin. Rashi tells us, it's 2 lines from the top of the page, הניקב ולא חסר קאי דמכשיר טענה דמתניתין ועתה הייתנו למאמר דמפולש ומצידו לצידו פסול בנקב כלשהו אפילו של מחה. So according to Rashi, it speaks about the less closed seifa of the Mishnah. Im nikav, anyway, it's kasher, which means if you have an etrog, imagine etrog, and they have a hole from one side to another, hole from one side to another, that make it unfit, that it's reach one side to another side. But Rashi said, even that is the side of a needle, afilu b'machat. So imagine a situation that you have a needle that was put from one side to another. That's make it nekev mefulash, that it's a hole from one side to another. But he said if it's not mefulash, if it's not from one side to another, for example, a person took a needle and it make it a tiny small hole, but it's nothing, lo chaser klum, it's nothing missing from the etrog, so that's still, in a sense, fitting etrog. Now, by Rava brings another point, which is the issue of comparison between treifot and etrog. What does that mean? The Gemarrah tells us in Tractate Chulin, page 54, simanei treifa, which means you have an animal, you want to use it for, let's say, a regular slaughtering process, and you have a tissue that it was removed. So in other words, since we talk here about the cover of the body, the skin sometimes peeled, and as a result of the skin peeled, it turned to have, in our language, in our understanding, a level of treifa, which means we not consider it as a skin, as a total skin. In other words, imagine, for our just basic understanding, you have a fellow that spend on a open sun full day, which is very unhealthy, can create a cancer in the skin. And as a result, what happened, his body is all red, or whatever it is, and it starts peeling. The skin peel and peel and peel and peel. Okay? Here we talk about animal that the skin is peeled. It's called, in the rabbinic language, gluda. So we now try to juxtapose, for our understanding, the disqualification in etrog and disqualification in the animal. Noldu ba'etrog simanei treifa. If the sign of not kosher, it's called treifa, develop in the etrog, which means that the same as animal, mahu. Is that make the etrog unfit or not? Maika mibaye. Give me an example of something that is siman treifa. In niklaf, if you tell me that the etrog was peeled, That's something that we already learned, that it's unfit. I nisdak, if it's pierced, so pierce, so by the animal, Tosfot explained to us, and it's also based on the Gemarrah in Chulin 54, that in animal that they have these issues of a peeling skin, the animal cannot survive in 12 months period. And therefore, it's considering as treifa. So Tosfot explained Rabbeinu Hananel the same in Dibur Amatchil Inisdak. So we juxtapose to here. That's simanei treifa. Tanina, inikav, if you tell me that it pierces, Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah that if it has this point of hole and it's not missing from the body of the etrog, it's kasher. So Tosfot explained to us that it's a difference between hole in the etrog, that it's not always a hole in the etrog made it unfit. Ki kami ba'eleki de'ula ma Rabbi Yochanan. That's applied at what Ula said on behalf of Rabbi Yochanan. Again, Tractate Chulin, page 47. Re'ah shenishpecha kekiton, if you have a lung whose content can be poured like a pitcher, which means the tissue dissolved to the point of liquidification, which means that you have a lung, and the lung covered with the two some type of skin. It looks like secretion, but it's a skin. One is internal and one is external. Now what happened is, when the quote unquote the meat of the lung, it's swallow, so but that skin line, it's still full. We say that the animal is still kshera and it's not considering treif, even that it's reached a point that the meat turned to be so soft and so liquid that it can run from one corner to another. That's what Rashi tells us based on the Gemarrah in Chulin 47b. Ve'amar Rava, vehu dekaima simfonaha. So Rashi explained to us that what Rava said, that this is halacha if you have symphonize, here this translated as a bronchia.
The bronchial tubes.
Bronchi tube.
Yeah,
are intact,
tubes, yeah.
which means that's the tzinorot, that's the tube that the oxygen go through, and meaning that the lung itself is full, but that's in a condition that nothing was squeezed. Ha lokam me symphonia, which means that this animal, if this animal can be healed, then it's kosher. But if this symphonah will not feel full, so then it's treifa, because the animal cannot get better, cannot heal. Hachamai, now we juxtapose to etrog. What happened to the etrog? Imagine that the inner part of the etrog is inus. You see, this is in part of the etrog. So the inner part of the etrog reach a point that it's squeezed in a sense, so the place that collected the original seed or sperm of the etrog, meaning the foundation of the etrog, is full. Mm-hmm. But what happened is the meat part inside, it's squeezed.
You're saying it's dried out, or?
It can be dried out, or it can somehow looks like dried out, meaning they changed the.
Right. Okay.
It doesn't look healthy. Mm-hmm. Let's put it this way. And how you know that? Let's say you take samples from a tree, and you split it like that, and you see inside that we call in Hebrew chadrei hazera. This skin part. It looks okay, but the meat, the skin around, it doesn't look right.
It doesn't look like the other one.
All right. So we compared and we said, Dilma hatam hu de lo shalit be'avira. We juxtapose. We said, wait a second. In the lung, the reality is that since the lung is totally sealed, which means the outside air of the body doesn't have a direct connection to the lung because the body protected the lung. Hadar bari, so the meat part, quote unquote, of the lung can be healed, and therefore the meat part of the lung can, the animal can rebuild itself and be healed, and therefore it's not considering a strafe. Aval hacha, but here in the etrog breathe the same as all the other fruits. The shalit ba'avira, that the connection with the air from outside connected to the body of the etrog, and is influenced when it's opened. So the inner part, it's like dry, or it's like it doesn't look correct, healthy. Saroche masrachat. So therefore the etrog go and come and become less and less and less effective. So there are 2 points here, the rabbi said. Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi explained it in 2 points. One, since in a lung is a chance to be healed, and etrog is no chance to be healed, therefore the etrog is unfit in the lung, because it's not olech v'nirkav, it's not become decay, versus the etrog is decay, that make it unfit. So basically what you see here, when you compare it, that this is a process of decay that we said in the etrog it takes place, or dilma roshna, or we said that is no difference between etrog and the lung. So let me read to you the code. Hilchot lulav siman taf reish memchet seif dalet. The factors which invalidate an etrog in 648, number 4. If all the flesh inside the etrog has softened, but the outer peel has lasted, and the seed rain was lasted inside, the etrog is valid. There are some rabbis, some authorities who rule that such an etrog it's invalid. And Mishnah Berurah explains, and he said, one can peel if this is so by touching the etrog with his hand, or the one who said it's not valid said one should be stringent in this matter in circumstances where this is possible. So you see here by the code by Mishnah Berurah that it's safek, it's not clear. So now the Gemara tried to clear the quandary, the safek. Tashma etrog tafuach, saruach, shaluk, kushi lavan, umnumar, pasul. So here I bring a situation that the etrog has all kind of tafuach, saruach. There's a few explanations. Later they give us the details. But kavush, it's a pickled, boiled. It looks like a very dark kushia, very white or sparkled. So it's unfit. Etrog kekadur pasul. If the etrog look like a ball, it's unfit. It doesn't look. I don't know if your books have a picture.
Well, it doesn't have a pitum.
Yeah, you know, but it looks.
Well, no,
like,
I'm just saying if it's round, it can't. I mean, it
looks like a little ball. So v'yesh omrim afa tiyom. There are those who say that tiyom, it's a twin etrog. Looks like attached to the twin brother of the etrog. Very nice. You see it in your Gemarrah. Very good. So they said etrog aboser, that it's small. Rabbi Akiva posel v'chachamim machshirim. That the etrog, that it's like unripe. Rabbi Akiva unvalid, and the sages said it's okay. So the Tosfot explained that usually they speak about the minimum size and what exactly the problem with the etrog. But in short, this is a etrog that it's unripe. Gidlo badfus, if he deem it in the some type of tavnit, some type of
mold?
Yes.
To form it into
כמין בריאה אחרת, it's look like a total different entity, so it's not look like a etrog, pasul is unfit. קטן הניע תפוח או סרוח. Okay, what is the תפוח או סרוח? So it's not fit. So he said, מה אליו תפוח מבחוץ וסרוח מבפנים? You have to say that תפוח meaning that is decay on outside, and saruach meaning is decay on the inside. The Gemara said, so it means that it's unfit. And it basically the same as lung that was turned to be like watering. So they said, lo, idi ve'idi, both of them mibachutz, it's a ply of outside. Velo kashya, hade tafach, aval gavdo lo sarach, ve'hade sarach, aval gavdo lo tafach. So one of them is shra b'mayim, he combined it with water. The other one, if you have those chadrei zera, those part of the seed, collected the seed, it's still, so the Braita did not conclude it, he left it up. Amar mar etrog kushi pasul. The kushi at etrog, it's unfit. Ve'atani etrog kasher. So they said, dome le kushi pasul. Something, look, now you ask me what is kushite, the etrog kushi. In general, it's a dark, but it's not clear here what exactly the location, if it's really something that is come from kushite, because that contradicted what we said in the previous one. Amar Rabbi ki k'tnan lematnitin domeh lekushi k'tnan. That's something that it's similar to that one. Rav amar lo kasha le'an v'le'ulu. So he basically, the one who said that the kushiyat is okay, it's a Babylon, that they get used to those etrogim that come from the land of kushiyat, which again I'm not so sure how it's connected to Babylon, because if you talk about kush in the Megillat Esther, for example, it's not clear if that's the same kushiyite here. Or you said here, lehu, it's the people of Eretz Yisrael that they don't get used to those black etrogim, and therefore, for them, it's considering etrog that it's unfit. Rashi explains that the issue here is the beauties, the hadar. The Avia Ezra, Rav Shach, in Ilchot Lulav chapter 8, elaborates and explains that it's we are basically do not treat it, doesn't resonate the same qualifications as the regular green etrog. Anyway.
Now, are they saying though that if it's an Ethiopian etrog, as I referred to it before, and so it should be, I mean, its natural appearance is to be darker, that's okay, whereas one that's, you know...
The Babylon, people who live in Babylon, so they get...
But I mean, I'm saying, are they differentiating between that and one that's not supposed to look dark, but looks dark? You see what I'm saying? Like
I can tell you what I understand, that in Babylon, they must probably attach to that Kushite place, and they clearly juxtapose average etrog that is total dark from their neighbors to their own etrog, and therefore they use those etrogim, versus people in Eretz Yisrael that get used to a normal etrog, green, normal look etrog, and when they brought them from the land of Kushite, which again, it's not in Egypt, it has to be a little farther than that. Yeah, so let's say Ethiopia for the sake of understanding, right? Which may be a tremendous difference when you split it. You look inside, most probably it's different, and that's the reason they make it. But as I said earlier, I'm not so sure what the land of Kushite means here. Back to our subject, etrog, aboser, unripe etrog, Rabbi Akiva posel v'chachamim machshirim. Rabbi Akiva make it unfit, and the sages allow it. Omar Rabba Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Shimon אמרו דבר אחד. Rabbi Akiva had amaran, that if you have unripe etrog, it's not considering a fruit. Rabbi Shimon Maihi. Detnan, we learned in the Mishnah Tractate, Masro, the first chapter, Rabbi Shimon poter et haetrogim bekotnan. Rabbi Shimon exempts etrogim from the requirement to be tied while it's a small state. So it means Rabbi Shimon hold that an unripe etrog is not a fruit. אומר לאביי דילמה לאי. עד כאן לא קמא רבי עקיבא הכא דבעינן הדר וליקה. What Rabbi Akiva said, that we require beauty, and an etrog is none in a case of an unripe etrog due to its color or small size. Aval hatam, but over there, when there is the obligation to take a tithe, so he said, Kerabanan svirale, he hold what's the opinion of the sages, which means that one is obligated to tithe even a half-ripe etrog. Inami, another option, Ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Shimon Atam. Up to this point, Rabbi Shimon didn't say, meaning in regards to the obligation of tightening, that unripe etrog is exempt, ela dichtiv, but what is written in regard to tightening in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 14, aser te'aser, et kol tvuat zar'echa. The Torah said, you, meaning people who live in Eretz Israel, have an obligation, which by the way it's applied to this very way, but it's in a way rabbinic. The Torah said, you shall surely tithe the produce of your planting, which is brought forth in a field year by year. So what we understand from that verse, the idea is that the obligation to tithe applies only to produce that has developed to the point that they are typical for people to take out in a field for sowing. Meaning, that's the way people use it. So you collect the fruits and you tighten it. And if you have these fruits that you are in quandary, if the people tighten it or not, it's called, help me, tevel.
Oh, tevel. I mean, if it hasn't been.
Hasn't been.
Yeah, tevel.
Right?
Yep.
But if they tightening, if you see like in Eretz Israel nowadays, you see a sign that it was tightened. Tight, thank you. So you can use it.
Right.
Aval hacha. But here, when it regards to mitzvah of etrog, the festival of Sukkot, kerabanan svirale. The whole, according to the sages who disagree with Rabbi Akiva and will deem an unripe etrog that it is fit. Why? Because it's considering a it's considering a fruit, a produce, and it's considering hadar, it's considering beautiful, even that it's not totally ripe. 36b, so it means that it's not necessarily the opinion of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon are the same. Vetu lo midi, which means we cannot discuss this anymore. You hear sometimes on those meetings people said, okay, we reach a point that we cannot compare those opinions. Here is Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon. No more discussion. How do you call it?
End of the debate.
End of the debate. Next. Gidlo bidfus ועשאו כמין בריאה אחרת פסול. I'm teaching critical thinking at the college. So sometimes they reach a point that the student argue, and cannot continue, and it's a large class. So I just, we can't let 32 students drive you Meshuggah.
Right.
So in the middle of debate, he said, okay, no more debates, so go on.
Move on.
גידלו בדפוס, ועשאו כמין בריאה אחרת פסול. If you grow the etrog in a mold and shape it to appear like different species, it's unfit. אמר רבא לא שנו אלא כמין בריאה אחרת, אבל כבריאתו כשר. Meaning that it doesn't look like an etrog at all. It looks like weird creature, right? But something else, not an etrog. But if he makes it looks like an etrog, it's kosher. And Baruch Hashem, nowadays Eretz Yisrael is so blessed that you walk in the shuk, in the market, you see so many endless variety, right? In Machne Yehuda, you went recently.
Yeah.
So you see a variety of fruits, that some of them you need to recognize the name even, I don't know those names. So it maybe grew in a field. Look, take peppers. You have now yellow and orange and red and green and
there's so many different types of peppers.
So people can produce those, especially with sophisticated technology, in many different ways. Anyway, pshita, So that's obvious. כי מין בריאה אחרת תנן. So what did Rava tells us? לא צריכה דאבידה דפי, which means that you make it like many planks. You make it like, you see it like those תחנת מים, which means that it looks like planks, line. It's like some type of small tunnels. So Rashi explains that is round, but they have those holes or charitzim, like small tunnels that come from the top to the bottom. And the Tumat Adeshan said, and Chayadam too, they said that since they have skin and meat, it doesn't make it missing, like chaser, that something is missing. But that's the חידוש here. איתמר את כל שנקבו עכברים, המראה ואין זה הדר. Okay, a fellow have an etrog, but he put it in a place that the mice can come and eat it, and all of a sudden they use the teeth, and the mice ate the etrog. So Rav said it's no longer beautiful, it's no hadar. So that's make it unfit. Said Ini, is that correct? Rabbi Chanina matbil bei venafik bei. He used to eat a little bite of the etrog, and then whatever left, he make al netilat lulav. So he said, how come you do that? So he said, Rabbi Chanina kasher matnitin. What the Mishnah said that even something missing, boom, it's make it unfit. Bishla matnit Rabbi Chanina kasher kan biyom tov rishon. So we explained many times that we differentiate when we take the four species between the first day of Sukkot, because the Torah said it has to be used. That's in the book of Leviticus chapter 23. And here lekichat tamah, that's missing because it's not full. But the second day it's a rabbinic, so that's different. Rav that he said that it's not considering beauty as a question. Amar l'charav shani achbarim de meisei, because he said that these mice are repulsive, which means when you have a mice that pierce the etrog, so what you have, it's
well, you wouldn't want to eat it if you...
Right.
I mean, so... well, yeah, I mean, food that's been partially eaten by mice is not something you're going to want to eat yourself. So.
Yes. Anyway, I remember one time I went to a property that needs renovation in those years that I did real estate, and I saw a place that the mice ate some type of a part of the foundation. That I was in negotiation of buying it, and I backed off, and the guy said, how come? And I showed the engineer, when you go to the structure, that it's clear because we saw running mice in that area that they ate the foundation. In the real estate, the moment it's touched the foundation is not worth any money. So the mice have a very powerful teeth.
Mice,
especially with
rats,
wires.
Absolutely, they'll read through anything. I mean, concrete. I mean, if they need to get through it, they'll get through it.
He said it's still beautiful. The Rabbi Chanina matbil be venafik be, the whole story. But he used to eat a little bit and Rabbi Chanina kasha matnitin, that the Mishnah said that the etrog like that, it's unfit. Lo kasha, it's not a question. Why? Kan biyom tov rishon, kan biyom tov sheni. As we said, that's biblical, that's rabbinic, the second day. So the first day you need to have lekichat tamah, something that is full, perfect, nice, decent. Second, it's rabbinic. Etrog katan, tiny pizzale, tiny etrog, right? It's a small etrog. So the Mishnah said, Rab Meir said at the side of what? Rab Meir said that it's a side of a goz, like what nut. And Rabbi Yehuda said the size of an egg. Amar Rav from Rav Papa, remember Rav from Rav Papa is one of the name of sons of Rav Papa we mentioned at the end of each Masechta, when we do Siyum, right? So Rav from Rav Papa said, כמחלוקת כאן, כך מחלוקת באבנים מקורזלות. The same is dispute here, the dispute in regard to rounded stones. So they said, in those days, they used that to clean. People clean themselves. They don't have the system that we have today, Baruch Hashem, that we have a regular papers, etc., etc. So, and they used to do it in the field. So it was issues in Shabbat. So the sages allow people to use it, even it was muktzeh and set aside. They allow it. It's called kvod habriot. They respect the honor of people, and therefore they allow to carry muktzeh, even it was a rabbinic. So Rafram hold that this size of the stone that they allow to carry is the size of smaller trog that they use. So Rashi explained that it's not to compare the two different dinim, it's just to show us the size, the tanyash. בשבת, 3 אבנים וקרוזות מותר להכניס לבית הכיסא. 3 you can use, וכמה שיעורן. What's the size? רבי מאיר אומר כאגוז, like a walnut bark. רבי יהודה אומר כביצה, egg bark. So it means that the idea of this machloket, this argument, it's a total different. But when we talk about size, it's the same size. So we just use it for this purpose. ובגדול כדי שיוחז. So we explain that if you have a large one, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, that in a size that you can hold 2 in your hand, and Rabbi Yossi said even you hold 1 in 2 hands. תרניה אמר רבי יוסי, מעשה רבי עקיבא שבא לבית הכנסת וטרדו על כתפו. It's a story about Rabbi Yossi that he came to shul what? While he carried the etrog on his shoulder. Which means
Yemenite etrog.
that it's a huge, like the Yemenites,
Yeah.
but even bigger than them. Which means he came to shul, imagine the guy came with a huge one. Carry on his shoulder. Omar Rabbi Yehuda misham ra'aya. What are you bringing a source from that story? It's not a proof. Of him, the sages said to him, Amrulo, Ein ze hadar. They came to him and says, hey, you cannot use it. It's not considered hadar. It's not considered beautiful. So some said that the issue is that maybe a trog fell from his shoulder. But most of the rabbis said it's not considering hadar. It's not zekeli. It's not the beauty. Mishnah, ein ogdin et halulav ela bemino. The lulav can be bind only with its own species, which means that something that it used in that palm tree. Now, divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir omer, afilu bechut hamishcha. According to Rabbi Meir, he can use even this called b'mshicha. It's like a little cotton that you use to tighten. Omar Rabbi Meir, מעשה באנשי ירושלים שעובדים כלובים בגימוניות של זהב. It's like they use. This is like gold. Cord. Thank you. So it means that anyone, it's okay. אמרו לו, במינו היו הקדים אותו מלמטה. They said it's not proof because they used to do it under that from the bottom. So basically what they try to say that you use for the koishiklach, for this part, you use the same materials of the palm tree. Okay? And the idea is that here they talk about beauty. Now, halacha, follow Rabbi Meir. Soon you see. אמר רבא, אפילו בסיב, אפילו בעיקרא דדיקלה. Even you can use a fiber who grows around the trunk of the palm, of the date palm, and also even with the trunk of the date palm. ואמר רבא, מה איתמא דרבי יהודה? רבא explained what's the rationale of רבי יהודה. כסבר לולב צריך עגל. He hold that lulav needs binding. If you have another one that's already not 4 species, it turns to be 5, and then it's bal tosif. You should not add. That's against the idea that you should not add more mitzvot. How do you know the sivi? How do you know that this type of fiber and the trunk of the date, the species of the lulav? The Tanya, we learn in the book of Vayikra, chapter 23, Basukot teshvu, you should dwell in Sukkot, Sukkah shel kol davar divrei Rabbi Meir, which means you can use for schach anything. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Because the Torah did not say specifically any specific material. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein sukkah noeget ela be'arba minim shebalulav. You know what he said? If you want to use the schach for the sukkah, you have to use any species that made out of the 4 species we use for arbaat haminim. Which means you don't put the schach of the sukkah only by a palm tree, by myrtles, by willows, etc. Ve'adinoten, we learn it from the analogy, from the kal vachomer. Uma lulav she'en noheg balelot kebayamim, the obligation of the lulav, it applies on during the day, ve'no noheg ela be'arbaat haminim, that you use it only when you have the 4 species, which means you cannot have one species replaced by something else. You cannot take an orange in substitute of etrog, for example. Sukkah shenoeged by lot kebayamim, but sukkah that you have an obligation to have it fitting a kshera both day and night. And no din shenot ela be'arbaat haminim. How much so? It has to use the 4 species. Amru lo, the sages respond to Rabbi Yehuda and said, Kol din shadan mitchilato leachmir v'sof kol le'akel eno din. They said, any rules lechatchila that you infer initially to be stringent, but ultimately it is to be lenient, it is not a legitimate kal vachomer inference. So, meaning you use the stringencies lead to leniency, and the entire basis of the inference is undermined. So it means that the sukkah is not kshera, page 37, only if you use the arbaat haminim of the lulav. So he said, lo matzah arbaat minim, if he cannot find the 4 species to cover his sukkah, yehei yoshev vebatel, so he is not fulfilled the mitzvah of the sukkah. So they said, "V'Torah amra basukot teshvu shivat yamim, sukkah shel kol davar, any type of sukkah." V'chen be'Ezra omer, say something that they describe, the Ezra describe, that the head of the community said to the people. That's from the book of Nehemiah, chapter 8. Tz'u hahar. והביאו עלי זית ועלי עץ שמן ועלי הדס ועלי תמרים ועלי צוות ועשו סוכות ככתוב. So go forth unto the mountain and fetch olive branches, pine branches, and myrtle branches, and palm branches, and branches of the dense-leaved tree to make Sukkot as it's written. So Sukkah may be constructed even with materials that are not the 4 species. So Rabbi Yehuda savar hane lidfanot. All of these, what they mentioned referring to the book of Nehemiah, applies to the walls of the sukkah. But when it's come to the schach, you have to use only arbaat haminim. Utnan, we learned in the Mishnah, if you remember page 14, Mesakhin banesarin. We said in the Mishnah that we can use a roof with a cedar, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So it means that if you tell me that those cedars are part of the 4 species, but you have to use the body of the tree because they have to be 3 hand breadth. So since the species of the tree, it's considering okay, alma, we derive from that siv ve'ikara, the dikla. So which means that the centerpiece of the palm tree and the cedar, minad lulavahu. So it means that that's part of the lulava. So the fibers and the trunk of the dais palm are the species of the lulav. So they said shma mina. So you conclude from it that it's correct that the fiber and the trunk of the dates, it's considering part of the lulav species, and you can use them to do the koishiklach, to put the whole 3 species together, and it's not considering bal tosiv that you add another species to the four. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 648. Etrog sheniklaf, an etrog whose thin outer peel is completely removed is unfit, even if the body of the fruit itself remains intact. If any of the peel remains, it is fit. That's basically the Rava's opinion based on the Rif and the Rambam. But Rabbeinu Hananel said that it is fit only if the remaining part of the peel is at least the size of the small coin, Sela coin. If you have the split etrog, the question is how far. If it's protruded to the stem, so it's unfit even if none of the food itself is missing. However, if some of the etrog remain intact at the top of the bottom, it is fit even it's split in both sides. That's basically Rashi and the Rosh. Etrog that is pierced with a hole that completely goes to it, so it's unfit regardless of the diameter of the hole. If the hole does not completely goes through the etrog is unfit only if the hole is in the size of the Isar coin. As we explained, is a small one. We talk a little bit about the law of the non-kosher animal with the lung. So he said if an animal lung tissue dissolves to the point that the liquefaction, but the exterior membranes remain intact, and none of the bronchi dissolved, so they say the animal is not a treifa. That's basically Gemarrah in Chulin, Shulchan Aruch Yoredea 36. A etrog that it's liquidated from within, the etrog within a pop, liquefied, but whose outer peel and seed pocket remain intact, is fit. That's according to the Rif. The Tur said that it's unfit. The Mishnah Berurah, which we read a little bit, said that it's the best is appropriate to practice to rule stringency when possible. We talk about the etrog that they pickle or boil the etrog, or etrog that is kushia. So we said that again it depends. That for example the boil is unfit, that the pickle in vinegar it's unfit. The kushia they said it is fit, but we have to know which one. The white and speckled etrog it's not. If it looks like a ball, it's unfit. A twin etrog, again that you speak about two pieces, so it's a machloket, but basically they said that it's unfit. Etrog shegidlo batfus, if they grow etrog in a mold, so he said if it grows the etrog inside the mold, that alters its shape to the point where it's no longer resembles an etrog, it's unfit. However, if it retains the basic shape of an etrog despite slight modifications due to the mold, which means if you have the protrusions on either side of the fruit, it is fit. If it's incomplete, so again the question where and how, but an etrog that it's incomplete, it's unfit for use on the first day of Sukkot, but may be used during the rest of the festival. But again, that's all b'diavad. The Ramah said in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 649. We talk about large etrog. Large etrog, there is no maximum measure of the etrog, even if the exceedingly large is one is feet. That's like the Yemenite Jews. Egeler love, basic on the principle beauty yourself before him in the performance of the mitzvot. There is a mitzvah to bind three of the species together, like we call koishiklach, with at least one double knot. One may use any material to tie them, but the custom of many generations has been to tie them with the leaf of a lulav. Some tied the species together with the 5 knots based on some Kabbalistic teaching, and that's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 651. There's another point I want to mention. We use the book of Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah. So, like we said, V'chen be'Ezra, the mention about the Ezra the scribe. So the question is, Rabbi Akiva Eiger deal with that, and he said that the question is really, the text said V'chen be'Ezra Omer, that's written in the book of Ezra, and the reality is written in Nehemiah. So the reality is, the Gemarrah said in Bava Batra 14 that Ezra and Nehemiah are not two books, they are one book, and most of the old scripture hold these books as one, but especially if you count them as 24 books, and they don't count as two separate books. At the very beginning of book of Nehemiah, the Malbim was the great rabbi of the 16th century, was a student of my great-grandfather, the Decay Rebbe, so he was his student. So the Malbim wrote at the beginning of book of Nehemiah that the language of the first pasuk in Nehemiah begins with the words Divrei Nehemiah ben Chachalya Vayi b'chodesh Kislev. So that's proof that that's connected to the previous one. Or also they said Kan Chatzia Sefer, that's the half of the book, and that sign it's not appear in the middle of the book of Nehemiah. So it means if you count the psukim, if you measure them, that's Kan Chatzia Sefer, meaning that it's a half of both Ezra and Nehemiah. So why there are some places that separated? So the Gemara said in Sanhedrin 93b that it was some type of claim against Nehemiah, that he was in a way took credit for himself, especially by saying, please God, remember all my good deed for good, whatever I did for you people, etc., for these people. And therefore, the rabbis did not designate a separate book for him. Others said because he talked about the wicked people, but it's a big disputation if that's correct or not. The Chida explained in a response to Chaim Sha'al that he said that it's just kinuyim, it's just the words of this book, but the truth is that again, as far as treating it, we're treating it as one book, but as far as you see in the regular psukim, you see that in some Tanachim it's two separate books.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai